Round 13 of the World Championship, a race which should have been held last June on what's generally felt to be the best Grand Prix circuit of them all. But with the track surface breaking up, the race had to be postponed. And we meet in an atmosphere of controversy over the South African Grand Prix in October, which appears now definitely to be taking place as a result of a statement made yesterday by the president of the motorsport governing body, Jean-Marie Balestre.
Le président de la FIA, Paul Metternich.
If my team is going, I will go, because I'm employed by Ferrari to drive their cars. It's taken me 8 years to get where I am. I'm not going to blow it away because of political problems.
That's despite the view of world champion Niki Lauda that the South African Grand Prix shouldn't be held. And Niki, incidentally, won't be racing here today himself after going off in practice and hurting his wrist. Well, today in the Ardennes, with their unpredictable weather, it's wet, but showing signs of drying, which will create a lot of excitement with tyre changes for everybody, including World Championship leader Alain Prost and his only real rival for top honours, Michele Alboreto. With Lauda not starting his McLaren, Ferrari have a real chance to retake the lead in the Constructors' Championship from McLaren. And it's McLaren's Alain Prost in pole position on the starting grid, with Senna second, Piquet third, the Ferraris of Alboreto and Johansson fourth and fifth, Boutsen sixth and Nigel Mansell seventh. Derek Warwick's 14th, Martin Brundle 21st, and there are 24 to start a race which could well give us a surprise in today's changeable weather. And as we look at Michele Alboreto on the starting grid, I've just had a message that he's got an electrical problem with his Ferrari, as he did in this morning's warm-up, and that looks bad news for the Italian. Well, Michele Alboreto is in his correct grid position, but we've just had the news that he is in the spare car, so that problem would appear to have been resolved somehow.
This is Spa-Francorchamps, the beautiful road circuit set in the forested Ardennes area of Belgium. And it's the second time this year that the Grand Prix circus have come to this circuit, because we were all here in May only for the race to be cancelled because the road surface had broken up too severely for the cars to race on it. Well, there's now a magnificent new surface, but the problem that the cars have to contend with this time is the traditionally treacherous Spa weather, because it's been raining this morning. And as you can see from the picture, the road is still glistening wet, although the rain has now stopped. But all the cars are on wet weather tyres as they line up, 24 of them, for the 13th round in this year's championship. And on pole position, we have the man who's leading the championship by 12 points. Alain Prost, 65 points at the moment over Michele Alboreto. Already 5 Grand Prix wins this year, if you discount that win from which he was disqualified at Imola when his car was found to be slightly underweight. And Alain Prost must now surely be everyone's bet to become this year France's first ever world champion. Alongside him, the man who's won more pole positions this year than anyone else, but has still only won 1 Grand Prix in his career, the brilliant young Brazilian Ayrton Senna with the Lotus Renault. He wasn't as quick as Prost in practice, but he's very determined to add to that single win in Portugal early this year. And he's currently lying 4th in the championship, a lot lower, some say, than his talent should have put him. On the second row, Nelson Piquet, former world champion, struggling on through a difficult year with the Brabham BMW on its Pirelli tyres, but he had that win in France this year. Given a hot day, he can be very, very quick. It's certainly not hot here, and at the moment it's very wet. But Nelson Piquet, a man who wants to score some more points before this season's out. 4th fastest, Ferrari's Michele Alboreto, the only man who can still beat Alain Prost to the title this year. He's 12 points behind the Frenchman at the moment, 53 points to Prost's 65. But a win here today on the circuit where he had pole position when they were last here for practice in May, a win here today could change the whole face of the World Championship. His own teammate, Stefan Johansson, 5th fastest on the inside of the 3rd row. Stefan, the newcomer to the Ferrari team this year, not quite sure where he's going to be next year, because there are rumours that De Cesaris might have Marlborough pressure to help him into the Ferrari team for next year. So Stefan needs a good drive today to ensure his drive with Ferrari for next year. And here's the darling of the Spa crowd, Thierry Boutsen, the only Belgian in Grand Prix racing, a tremendously good qualifying performance on a circuit which of course he knows very, very well indeed, 6th fastest with the Arrows BMW, his best grid position of his Grand Prix career, and he is really looking to put on a great performance for the crowd here. Moving back on the 4th row.
Sa voiture de réserve au cas où la piste serait détrempée, ce qui n'est plus vraiment le cas maintenant. Et il a réglé sa voiture de course pour l'éventualité d'une piste à demi-sèche ou en voie de séchage, si vous me passez l'expression. Ici, Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost qui n'a pas pu bénéficier de l'appui de son coéquipier Niki Lauda dans ce Grand Prix de Belgique, puisque le champion du monde en titre s'est blessé vendredi matin lors des essais libres. Niki Lauda qui souffre d'une déchirure à un poignet droit. Il a été victime d'une sortie de route à la suite du blocage de son accélérateur dans une courbe heureusement pas trop rapide. Et rentré immédiatement à Vienne où son masseur Willy Dungel s'est occupé de lui, eh bien, il a fallu se rendre à l'évidence qu'il s'agissait d'une déchirure, voire même éventuellement d'une fissure du poignet, et c'est ainsi que Niki Lauda a déclaré forfait. Les gens de McLaren ont bien essayé d'aligner tout de même une deuxième voiture. On a même fait venir John Watson, mais ce dernier n'a pas pu s'aligner car il aurait fallu pour cela l'accord unanime de toutes les équipes, et l'équipe Ferrari, c'est de bonne guerre, on peut le comprendre, a refusé de donner son accord, et c'est la raison pour laquelle McLaren n'a pu aligner qu'une voiture ici. Dans l'image, Alain Prost qui a réussi un petit exploit. Vous direz qu'il n'est pas un exploit près, mais tout de même, Alain Prost a été le plus rapide durant tout le week-end, à l'exception du warm-up de ce matin, lors des essais non chronométrés de vendredi matin et de samedi matin, et lors des essais qualificatifs de vendredi après-midi et de samedi après-midi. C'est dire que le petit bonhomme entend bien mettre tous les atouts de son côté, même s'il envisage de faire, un peu comme à Monza, une course tactique, qui lui avait pour le moins réussi, puisque Prost a gagné à Monza alors qu'il semblait se contenter parfaitement de la deuxième place derrière Rosberg. Mais ici, Prost a pour but, bien entendu, de terminer au mieux, de terminer si possible sur le podium et si possible en vainqueur. Il s'était imposé ici il y a 2 ans, mais comme il y a 15 jours, il n'envisage pas de donner la chasse à ceux qui partiront très fort. On pense en particulier à Ayrton Senna qui partage avec lui la première place. On pense à Keke Rosberg, on pense à Nigel Mansell et dans une certaine mesure aussi à De Angelis ou encore à Johansson qui pourraient jouer les lièvres dans ce Grand Prix de Belgique de Formule 1 qui aurait dû se disputer, on le rappelle, en juin dernier. Mais le revêtement trop frais n'avait pas tenu, d'où le report à aujourd'hui. Cette course qui va se dérouler devant un public tout de même assez dense. Et on constate les triures sur les gommes de la McLaren de Prost. Départ prévu dans 7 minutes environ. Une voiture n'est jamais vraiment prête. Et il ne serait pas étonnant, s'il est certain que tout le monde partira avec des pneus pluie, il ne serait pas étonnant que on assiste à un changement de pneumatique car la piste pourrait bien sécher. Il y a un vent extrêmement faible, il ne fait pas très chaud, il faisait 11 degrés ce matin, il en fait 13 maintenant. Et les particules particularité de ce circuit. En ce qui concerne la Formule 1 d'abord, c'est que le départ se donne avant la fameuse épingle de la source, c'est-à-dire que les voitures ont tout juste le temps de passer la 3e vitesse avant de remettre la première pour négocier cette épingle extrêmement fermée, extrêmement serrée. Puis c'est la descente vertigineuse vers l'eau rouge, mais nous reverrons, nous redécouvrirons ce circuit d'ici quelques instants lorsque les voitures s'élanceront pour le tour de chauffe. Alors en attendant ce tour de chauffe, nous allons évoquer la conférence de presse du président Balestre d'hier, conférence de presse au cours de laquelle le Grand Prix d'Afrique du Sud a été confirmé. Et à ce sujet, je me dois de répéter, de préciser, car certaines informations ont été déformées, ou en tout cas sans être falsifiées, sont erronées dans la presse suisse de ce matin, car ce n'est pas le président Balestre qui a pris cette décision, c'est la FIA, la Fédération internationale de l'automobile, qui est présidée par le prince Metternich, et cette décision n'est pas du tout le fait d'un seul homme, elle n'est même pas le fait du président Balestre, elle est le fait des 93 fédérations nationales de l'automobile. Pour la Suisse, c'est l'Automobile Club de Suisse. Pour la France, c'est la Fédération française du sport automobile. Pour la Belgique, c'est le Royal Automobile Club de Belgique. Le nom de 3 pays, dont l'URSS, dont les États-Unis, qui ont tous estimé qu'il n'y avait aucune raison de punir l'Automobile Club d'Afrique du Sud et ainsi de supprimer ce Grand Prix. C'est une décision qui est conforme au statut de la Fédération internationale de l'automobile. C'est une décision qui, sportivement, peut être qualifiée de juste, même si politiquement, elle l'est un peu moins, dans la mesure où elle ne tient pas compte de ce que l'on appellera la vox populi, où elle ne se met pas à l'unisson de la volonté universelle de voir abolir l'apartheid en Afrique du Sud. Mais la FIA, pour l'instant, s'est montrée très ferme face aux pressions politiques venues de l'extérieur. Et pour l'instant, elle tient bon, entre guillemets, et elle s'en tient à une ligne de conduite, elle s'en tient à ses statuts. Elle ne veut pas, pour l'instant, entrer en considération quant à ce qui se passe en Afrique du Sud. Cela, elle pourra l'envisager par la suite si elle estime que les mesures de sécurité pour le déroulement de son Grand Prix et pour la sécurité des pilotes et des voitures est en jeu. Ce sont ces considérations seules qui ont été prises en compte, et à ce titre-là, on doit respecter cette décision, même si elle ne se met pas à l'unisson de la campagne qui est menée actuellement avec insistance et raison pour que la situation raciale s'améliore, voire prenne fin en Afrique du Sud. Donc pour l'instant, ce Grand Prix est confirmé en date du 19 octobre, mais les choses peuvent encore évoluer d'ici là. Pour l'instant, la Fédération internationale de l'automobile a démontré son indépendance, a démontré son identité. C'est ce qu'elle entendait faire dans un premier temps. Et je le répète, Dieu sait si les journalistes en général ne sont pas toujours d'accord avec le président Balestre. Eh bien, en l'occurrence, on ne peut pas être d'accord ou ne pas être d'accord avec lui, car ce n'est pas lui, je le répète, qui a pris cette décision. Revenons au Grand Prix de Belgique, dont nous allons vous donner connaissance de la grille de départ qui devrait apparaître incessamment sous vos yeux. Nous aurons donc Alain Prost sur la McLaren TAC Porsche en pole position, qui a tourné en 1,55,306, soit à la moyenne de 216,676 km/h de moyenne, avec à ses côtés la Lotus Renault d'Ayrton Senna. En deuxième ligne, Nelson Piquet sur Brabham BMW et Alboreto sur Ferrari. En troisième ligne, Johansson sur Ferrari et Boutsen sur la Arrows BMW. En quatrième ligne, Nigel Mansell sur la Williams et Gerhard Berger sur la Arrows. En cinquième ligne, De Angelis sur Lotus et Rosberg sur Williams Honda. suivi de Théo Fabi qui partage la 6e ligne au volant de sa Toleman Art avec Marc Sourer. En 7e ligne, Patrick Tambay et Derek Warwick, des deux Renault. En 8e ligne, les deux Alpha de Patrese et Ghinzani. En 9e ligne, les deux Ligier de Lafitte et Stripe. Pardon, en 7e ligne, c'est Patrese sur l'Alpha qui partage cette ligne avec la Toleman de Ghinzani, puisque Chiver, lui, est plus loin. Il est 19e, précédant Alliot, Brundle.
Are a mirror of what they were in Estoril as the warm-up lap starts.
Yes, off they go, and apparently the whole field is on wet weather tyres. Now, we've had a very wet and dismal morning here. The cloud has been sitting low over the circuit. We've had rain and showers, but just about 3/4 of an hour ago, the cloud suddenly lifted, the sun even came out, and it now looks, I'm not an expert on the weather, but just looking at the sky, it looks as if we're going to get a definitely no more rain this afternoon. There they go, climbing up through Eau Rouge. Very quick corner, just about flat out in dry conditions, but very tricky in the wet. And it's an interesting thing because the cars are going to dry the track pretty quickly. And it's the old story. What is going to be very important is going to be the choice of timing for the drivers to come in and change onto slick tyres. Now, in my experience, which I think, although it's a fairly ancient history, the people who do best in this situation are the brave ones who come in and get onto the dry tyres early. As soon as the line starts to dry, it's time to get onto dry tyres. I strongly suspect Prost has studied enough history. It's not a thing that the drivers can practice very often because wet-dry races are relatively rare. But I'm sure he's done his homework, studied the history, and if he's got any sense, he'll be in early. So, in fact, there is the sun. So the sun is poking through the cloud in places, and the weather is definitely brightening up generally. So I would anticipate that certainly within 10 laps, we will have a dry line. Alboreto, of course, starting in his spare car, and starting pretty much, as it were, on a cold car, because although the cars are built to pretty high standards and they're made as identical as possible, believe it or not, they still feel pretty different to a driver. So Alboreto will be fairly keyed up, but that's not a bad thing for him because he's under pressure for the championship, and in a way, having the distraction of the problems that he's had with the spare car tends, if anything, to relax a driver and dilute some of your nerves for the start. But this, of course, isn't so much pressure at the start. In a wet race, the drivers who are thinking along the right lines are going to be thinking more about when to change tyres. This is going to be the crucial decision of this Belgian Grand Prix. Prost, of course, was completely, well, I say he was dominant in practice. He got the pole, which means because McLarens can't get a lot of extra power with their engine for qualifying, unlike most of the others, that he managed to set the pole with considerably less power than most of, or certainly than all of his close rivals, which would have meant that in a purely dry race, that Prost had a really huge advantage.
On disputé le plus de kilomètres, parcouru le plus de kilomètres en tête cette saison, 968,5 pour Senna, 825,5 pour Prost, pour un total de 3542 km et 625 mètres de course en l'espace de 12 Grands Prix, puisque c'est maintenant à la 13e manche du championnat du monde des conducteurs que nous allons assister, et un départ qui va être donné par le directeur de course Robert van der Slagmolen.
And this has been officially declared a wet race. Everybody is on wet tyres. I discerned as they went round Blanchimont that there is a dry line starting to emerge there already, and we're going to be in for some real excitement with tyre changes soon. Alain Prost has got an enormous advantage because he's got a clear circuit in front of him as they go down to La Source, which is only about 100 yards away. It's a good start. Down to the right-hander, first gear this is, and as you can see already, it's Ayrton Senna in the lead. And off spins. I can't see who that is, and it's incredible. The way, it's one of the Brabhams, it must have been Piquet. Senna is leading, Prost is second, Alboreto is already up to third, Mansell is fourth, Johansson is in fifth position, and it was indeed Nelson Piquet on his very suspect Pirelli tyres from the point of view of wet weather grip. They had an enormous number of spins on Pirellis in the morning practice today, and Piquet has already demonstrated that it's like driving on ice. But Prost is in second place.
Yes, well, Piquet obviously kept his engine running because as the field went through, he must have regained pretty quickly, because I saw Piquet somewhere down towards the back of the field, but very much in there. So, good clean start by Senna. Remember, Senna's performances in the wet since he's been in Grand Prix racing have been exciting to say the least, and also showing great skill. He was brilliant in Monte Carlo last year. He absolutely dominated the Portuguese Grand Prix here in those streaming conditions, the first European race of the championship. And someone is challenging Alboreto.
Yes, round the left-hander comes Senna in the lead. Prost in second place. It's Nigel Mansell in third position, who has taken Michele Alboreto, who desperately needed to at least keep Prost in sight because of the World Championship situation. But once again, the uncanny calm and remorseless driving of Ayrton Senna, who has got a magnificent tactical brain and the delicate touch that's needed to keep a car going on this wet circuit, has shown him up in the lead.
Well, you can see there the line is starting to dry already. So the drivers who are thinking along the right lines should already be assessing when they can change tires. I would think that in another 2 or 3 laps, it will be dry enough. We've got to look at all of the circuit, because you don't want to change onto dry tires when there are still big puddles, because then you get serious aquaplaning. Now you can see how good the McLaren is, because for sure Prost is not going flat out. He can afford to drive defensively now, and he's holding on with no trouble at all to Ayrton Senna.
Senna leads, Prost second, Nigel Mansell there in third position. Fourth and fifth are the 2 Ferraris of Alboreto and Johansson. Round La Source, and here is Senna, Prost in third position, Mansell, then Alboreto, Johansson in sixth position. It is Keke Rosberg as up towards the Eau Rouge. Johansson is in fifth position now, and now they go down to Les Combes, and on a dry day they're doing some 200 miles an hour, and as you can see, Senna has the gap between Senna and the race leader is being reduced, but Christian Danner there in the Zack-Speed car has already been lapped, so he's obviously got some sort of a major problem, which is slowing him right up as Senna goes through the pit. The mechanics there from the Brabham team, this confirms what James was saying. As the dry line is emerging so quickly, the mechanics in the pit lane are already ready to put on new tyres and wheels. Here's a replay of the start, and you see Senna sprinting away from the line, going down to the right-hander at La Source. First gear, it's about a 50-mile-an-hour bend. Doesn't sound much, but it's extremely quick. Now watch Piquet spin. Piquet, who is in second position, spins off. Prost and the 2 Ferraris go past him in second, third and fourth position.
Yes, pretty hairy moment. Everybody just missed it. And you can see there that Piquet kept the engine running, ended up, there he is on the left, facing the right way, and got away pretty much straight away. Back live in the race now. Look at the line. Look now, it's pretty dry up there. That is definitely okay for dry tires. In fact, Senna there, and Thierry Boutsen has in fact clawed his way past Keke Rosberg into sixth place, and there's a bit of a bunch forming behind Michele Alboreto, who is wisely driving very sensibly. He knows whatever he does today, he must finish. He must score points to keep alive any hope in the championship. So Alboreto, oddly enough, will be taking it pretty defensively. Now let's have a look at the road surface. It's fairly wet there. You can always tell by how much spray is coming off the tyres. And a bit of a gap opening as Alboreto tiptoes his way round.
But look at Nigel Mansell right up with Alain Prost. Senna leads, Prost second, Nigel Mansell third, and very close to the McLaren. Then there's a big gap with Johansson now in fourth position on his own, and Boutsen is in fifth position, Rosberg is sixth, De Angelis is seventh, and Alboreto is missing. In fact, he goes past me now in about 10th position. And there's Mansell. There is De Angelis in the Lotus. And that was Alboreto as what are now midfield men go through. We are on lap 3 in this 43-lap race with the prospects of tyre changes as Christian Danner goes through.
Yes, we didn't see it, but I suspect that Michele Alboreto had a quick spin because his car sounded healthy and he seems to be running back. And in fact, that won't have cost him too much. But the worry is that he's having a little bit of difficulties in the spare car, and it may not have been set up. And there is Mansell having a look down the inside of Alain Prost. Decides he's not quite in the right position. Drive carefully, Nigel. Nigel's having a look. I do want him to be careful because I've got a bet that he's going to finish the race today.
Well, if he does, he will be high up. Prost, of course, as we've said, can drive a very tactical race. He just wants to keep ahead of Alboreto as far as he's concerned. He's won 21 Grand Prix and is getting very close to the top in terms of percentage of wins to drives, but it's Senna, Prost, Mansell, those three virtually on their own now as they're going up through the trees, and at this point they're doing about 175 to 180 miles an hour as they brake and go down into second gear for what's called the bus stop, the chicane, the left, the little straight. Prost's rear steps out. Mansell is pressing him very hard. It's still Senna leading across the line at the end of lap 3. Prost second, Mansell third. Now we look back down the track towards the bus stop to see the fourth man come through. Should be Stefan Johansson. And now this is Nigel Mansell's chance to get right up on the rear wing of Alain Prost's McLaren and hopefully take second place. He's got enormous power in that Honda engine, more than the tag engine of Alain Prost, and they're going up from Eau Rouge up towards Kemmel now, and it's getting on to 200 miles an hour. I do mean 200 miles an hour as Nigel Mansell comes out of the slipstream of Alain Prost with sparks flying. He's on full tanks, and those are the titanium skids, and he's taken second place. Nigel Mansell from Port Erin in the Isle of Man is up into second place in the Belgian Grand Prix. Down to third goes Prost. Senna is still leading, and those three are on their own. The next one through should be the Scarlet Ferrari of Stefan Johansson. There is the race leader.
Yes, of course, one of the things that the wet race will do for everybody is that, of course, the fuel consumption at this stage on a wet track, and there is Mansell just bottoming over the bump there. That's his skid plate. It's meant to do that. That's a titanium plate. Sparks fly. It looks spectacular, but it's no problem. And Mansell, a nice, clean overtaking manoeuvre. He got a good run at Prost, and he's clean through into second place. And now, can Mansell get after Senna? I suspect he can. Incidentally, this morning, in the wet practice, when it was very wet, Nigel Mansell was the quickest in race trim. And he's showing good form. And Senna is not getting away. Now, let's look at this line. Now, here, it's very dry. That was definitely what I call a dry tires situation. It's no problem. But it does seem that by changing early, you have an advantage. One of the advantages you have, and we are missing Keke Rosberg. One of the advantages that you have if you change early is that your dry tires get warmed up and working better to take full advantage of just a slightly greasy track. It's a little bit wet there.
The reason Keke Rosberg was missing is that he's been into the pits already to take on slick tyres. Now, this is a real gamble because it's still very slippery indeed out there as you look at Senna with a healthy gap between himself and Nigel Mansell in second place with Alain Prost right behind him. In fourth position, it's Johansson. Fifth is Boutsen. Sixth is Elio De Angelis. Seventh is Gerhard Berger. and in 8th position is Michele Alboreto. There is Prost, and Derek Warwick is in 9th position. Martin Brundle, the other British driver, is in 17th place, and that's Alboreto's car out, and that, if Prost finishes in the points, will almost certainly clinch the World Championship for the little French driver. Michele Alboreto out of the Belgian Grand Prix on lap 5.
And there, one of the that's Piquet in the pits. He's going for slicks, and I think Rosberg has done the right thing. He was the brave man. He was the first one in. We will look at his progress. The lap times are coming down towards a dry situation. There several seconds. Mansell's done a 2:23. They were 4 or 5 seconds slower than that this morning when the track was properly wet. And I think the early changes will be the people who benefit most. Very sad indeed for fans of close and exciting racing to see Alboreto out so early, because that really hurts the championship. And you see there, Mansell just going for the wet part to keep his wet tyres cooled down, because they overheat. They're made of a much softer rubber compound than the normal slick tyres. And there we're just looking down on Alboreto's car, and that really is a great shame.
Michele Alboreto trudging despondently back to the pits. What started out as a really good season for him when he had so many top positions, because Michele Alboreto won in Canada and Germany, and he had 4 second places and 2 thirds. And now on lap 5, Michele Alboreto is out of the race. There is Senna leading in the JPS Lotus with its V6 Renault engine, leading Nigel Mansell in the Williams Honda, and there he is in 2nd place. Next, the red and white McLaren of Alain Prost in 3rd position. In 4th place, behind Prost, it's Stefan Johansson in the Ferrari, then Thierry Boutsen in the Arrows. In 6th position, it's Elio De Angelis, and 7th, Gerhard Berger. So both the Arrows are in the top 7 places. An excellent performance. We should watch them, because they went extremely well in practice, and you can see how slippery it is as Senna and Mansell slid as they came up to the top of the ascent from the Eau Rouge. And Prost's car notably steadier. There's Johansson doing the same thing. That's Boutsen, and there is De Angelis in 6th place. There is 16 seconds now on lap 6 in this 43-lap race between Senna, the race leader, and De Angelis, who is 6th, as Warwick and Tombe go through, and they are fairly well down the field in about 10th and 11th places. And there is Martin Brundle. We just saw a quick flash of Martin Brundle cresting the rise in 14th place as we rejoin Ayrton Senna. Now, he is on his way down to the Rivage, that very long left-hander, which leads on to Le Pouhon with Nigel Mansell, who is now 3.3 seconds behind. It doesn't look it, but it is. And you see again, Nigel Mansell will have to make this decision soon about coming in, because he's deliberately finding the wet parts of the circuit to cool the rubber down, because those very heavy treaded tyres of his now are getting warm. And Rosberg is now in 17th place, 1 minute behind.
Yes, and the interesting thing is that Rosberg seems to be making ground, so his dry tyres seem to be working for him since he came out of the pits. He's made up a couple of places, and we'll try and keep an eye on him, because I'm certain in my own mind now that Rosberg might have gone a little bit early, but everybody should be coming in now. Yes, and you see what the dry tyres have done for Rosberg. He's just put up past this lap, so that confirms what I said. You've got to come in early, and these drivers don't study their history well enough, because if you look back over the years at wet-dry races, the guys who came in early, who were brave, have always done best. And Rosberg is now the fastest man on the track. Piquet, remember, is also out on dry tyres now. He hasn't been out long enough for us to get a fix on him. But, what's more, the team managers should be calling their men in. And here is Johansson, and he has done the sensible thing, and the team managers can now see that Rosberg's quickest, and they must call their drivers in immediately. I suspect that at the end of this lap, everybody's coming in, and they've dropped the car off the jack. So, a bit of a cock-up there by the Ferrari team.
whose teamwork has not been the greatest here. They seem to be getting a bit despondent about things as one of them furiously throws a tyre wrench in, and I think Senna will be coming in soon. I saw Kenny Szymanski, who is the Lotus tyre man there, getting agitated. We've already had Rosberg in for tyres, we've had Piquet in for tyres, we've had Johansson in for tyres, and here is the race leader, Ayrton Senna, on lap 7, only 3.3 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell. By the way, Martin Brundle is up into 10th position, with Nigel Mansell in 2nd place. Johansson is still 4th, will have lost a place or two with that tyre stop. And I remind you again that Michele Alboreto, 2nd in the World Championship, is out of the race, probably with a repetition of the electrical problems that he had in practice, as first Senna, now Mansell. There Prost, 1st, 2nd and 3rd, with only 5 seconds between them, go through. And is Senna coming in?
Well, if he isn't, he's stupid, because Rosberg is definitely the quickest man on the track, and he's flying. Rosberg is now up into 14th place and catching up hand over fist. And I would have thought that Frank Williams would have the sense to call Mansell in, but Mansell ought to know himself, because of course, from the time that the team manager can hang out a signal, you've still got to do another lap, and it's a long lap here at Spa, before you can then come in to obey his instructions. So the driver should be making his own decision, and certainly anybody who doesn't come into the pits to change his tyres now is doing the wrong thing, and they haven't done their homework. And it seems to me there are a lot of them. Now, Senna, who is inexperienced, but with a bit of homework, he should have known.
Et il ne s'est pas arrêté non plus. Alors, je vous parlais tout à l'heure de ce bâtiment sur la gauche. Il s'agit d'un hôtel-restaurant. Et comme le Grand Prix de Belgique est organisé par l'Automobile Club de Belgique, bien sûr, mais sur le plan financier par Bernie Eccleston, qui détient les droits TV, il a intenté un procès au patron de ce restaurant, car celui-ci avait disposé des panneaux.
And into the pits to take on new tyres comes Patrick Tambay, the Frenchman, in the Renault. Now let's watch the teamwork. 4 pneumatic hammers, and that was a good stop. I didn't get the time, and we haven't seen it on the digital readouts, but engineer Carletti, with the beard, just stroking his hair there, he's looking at his stopwatch, and I think Derek Warwick is coming in now. John Gentry, his team engineer, will be watching.
Les droits de télévision sur ce circuit. Du coup, le patron du restaurant a redoublé de la pose de ses placards. Et sans doute que ce week-end du Grand Prix de Belgique sera financièrement très intéressant pour lui. Voilà, ça touche devant nous. C'est une de Soleiman, ça doit être...
And that is Johansson off. Well, the Belgian Grand Prix is really getting exciting.
Yes, but on both occasions they have gone out on dry tyres and I think got carried away. Ginzani just literally has come out of the hairpin round down the hill, and he just lost it on the straight. He just got overexcited, gave it too much boot. Remember, the slicks don't work very well when they're cold, and on a...
That's Rotengatter, that's Hube Rotengatter, the Dutch driver in the Osella. And he's a man who brought money into the Osella team and displaced Piercarlo Ginzani, who has just gone into the Armco here, and I can report is okay. He went in sideways. He didn't hit the front of the car or anything. And clearly the second Ferrari is out of the Belgian Grand Prix. What a day of disaster for Maranello, with Michele Alboreto out on lap 5 and now on lap 8. It's Johansson, and Senna has changed tyres. And we're waiting for the Renault of Warwick to come in.
And Alain Prost has come in as well. He's changed. There goes Senna on his slicks with Mansell, by the look of it, also on brand new slicks. So the two of them side by side. And Senna just got the better of Mansell there. But I have to say that we're witnessing some pretty stupid driving by a lot of the drivers in the field. First of all, with Rosberg setting the example, the response from the opposition was extremely slow, which shows a great lack of awareness by nearly the whole field. And then we see people coming, flying out of the pits in what's a very long race on cold, dry tyres, and then driving straight into the barrier. So I have to say that we've seen a very serious lack of intellect en masse so far today.
Et satisfait, même si la chose n'est encore que provisoire. Mais il y a 2 à Rose parmi le groupe de tête.
A lap charter's nightmare with drivers coming into the pits, changing tyres, rejoining.
I'm very glad to see that Nigel Mansell is going sensibly. He is not trying to follow Ayrton Senna. They battled out of the pits, and Senna, there he goes, getting it through. You see how much better the dry tyres are working once they warm up. So, Mansell driving so far very sensibly.
And in the lead now is Elio De Angelis. You've just seen his black and gold JPS Lotus and the white helmet of De Angelis, and behind him is Ayrton Senna. De Angelis, who has yet to make a tyre stop, Senna, who has, and there is the race leader De Angelis, followed by Ayrton Senna in the yellow helmet. So the 2 JPS Lotus cars with Nigel Mansell in the Williams Honda are up at the front as they complete another lap. And into the pits comes, I think it was Boutsen in the Arrows.
Yes, Boutsen had the sense to come in. I don't understand why De Angelis is staying out. He's seen Senna come up behind him on dry tyres. He must realise that, unless he's fast asleep. And it really... And he sees how much better the dry tyres are working. There they go. Senna's about to overtake him. So why didn't he come in? They're 1 and 2 in the race, but De Angelis' lead is short-lived. There's a little twitch from Nigel Mansell. And Prost is not far behind either.
And look at this, Senna charging and Senna going through to take the lead with the sparks flying from Nigel Mansell. And this is great stuff. This is Senna leading, De Angelis second, Nigel Mansell in 3rd position. And the drive of Ayrton Senna is beyond description, because he's done all this on what started out to be cold tyres, which are warming up fairly quickly, but not as quickly as they would have done had the road surface been completely dry. And now he is back in the lead from Elio De Angelis, with Nigel Mansell, who has yet to make his tyre stop, in 3rd position. And it could well be that Nigel Mansell, in being kept out, and there he is, or staying out, has made a cardinal error. Well, he's ahead of De Angelis now, so Mansell is back in 2nd place. Senna leads, De Angelis 3rd.
And we haven't yet held the shot long enough, but you can take it from me that Alain Prost is in 3rd place and not very far behind. So he is shadowing these 2. He will know that Alboretto's out of the race. But although Prost doesn't need a win here now, he just needs to finish with a few points. I suspect that as the circuit dries out, that Senna and Mansell are going to find Prost coming at them from behind.
Lead right at the beginning of this race, with Alain Prost in 2nd place and then Nigel Mansell in 3rd place. Senna has regained that lead, and Mansell spinning. Mansell spins. Now you can see what the problem slick tyres are, with Nigel Mansell half spinning at La Source on lap 10. He recovered in a masterly fashion. He's on the dry part of the circuit now. As you can see, the sun is shining, and you can see from the different colour of the road surface that a really dry line is starting to emerge. Well, Ayrton Senna lost that lead temporarily on the 11th lap to his teammate, Elio De Angelis. He's back in the lead. This is lap 11. There is Nigel Mansell, and De Angelis is dropping back fast.
And Keke Rosberg, who was the first to change tyres, and sit here, we knew this was the right thing to do, and it's paying off now, because there's replay of Nigel Mansell, just knocked up the back wheels. You can see the flame there, kept the engine running, kept it alight, and he only lost less than 10 seconds anyway, and he's right back, still in second place. But Rosberg, who was a bit down in the field to start off, has come flying through into third place and has just passed Alain Prost. So Rosberg will be the quickest on the track for a while, because he's got the warmest tyres. He also knows the lines best, because he's been out there longest in these tricky conditions. And another person has attacked the barrier right under our noses. It's Philippe Alliot, who has lost it again with all the power of these cars on the straight line, smacked the barrier, and that is bye-bye Alliot. There he is. He's really bent the front wheel.
Yes, a pity that, to put it mildly. He's obviously all right. I say a pity because having had all sorts of problems with their Hart engines, the Ram people changed their fuel, as a result of which the engine was running extremely well in practice, and Philippe Alliot, who was 12th fastest in the warm-up, was in the race with a chance of finishing higher than he ever had before. But not now. It looks as though the Pirelli tyre problem has hit him, and we are now on lap 11 with the man that you're looking at, Ayrton Senna, in the lead, completing his 11th lap. Nigel Mansell, we're waiting to see him come through in second place, but very soon Keke Rosberg is bound to move up into second place, because Nigel Mansell has still got to make his tyre stop. Alain Prost is in a safe and cagey fourth position, with in fifth place Berger in the Arrows BMW, and in sixth position behind him his teammate Thierry Boutsen. So I say again, the Arrows are the cars to watch as the marshals drag Alliot's car off the track. It's off the racing line, thank heavens, and Senna now has got Mansell behind him, with Mansell still got to come in.
Mansell's been in. Mansell's now on slicks. He came in at the same time as Senna. You remember they went out together and battled around. And there is Berger. He's very late on the change. I have to say that wasn't very clever of him, but I should say in passing, full marks to the Arrows team. They've got steadily better as the season has gone on, and they really, after some years of trying and threatening, they're beginning to become a force to be reckoned with. And I think that really, if the Arrows team can get, with no disrespect to their drivers, if they can get hold of a top-line driver, they will then at least be able to make comparisons with the other cars, because they look pretty competitive. So, now, on the caption, there it is. Senna, Mansell, Rosberg pulling away slightly from Prost, but Prost is getting into the groove. In fact, Rosberg pulled away a bit, and Prost is now holding.
Lap 12, then Senna leading, Mansell in second place, about 2.5 seconds behind him. In fact, you should see the Williams come into shot. Well, it's more than 2.5 seconds now, as Senna goes into the bus stop at the end of his 12th lap. Mansell second, Rosberg third, and the fastest man on the circuit. No, the fastest lap now has been put up by Eddie Cheever in the Alfa Romeo with its Goodyear tyres. And in fourth position, behind Rosberg, it's Alain Prost. In fifth position, Thierry Boutsen. And in sixth place is Mansell, going round the right-hander at the end of the circuit at La Source. Now, what's the gap between him and Ayrton Senna? It has increased. It's just over 6 seconds now. The brilliant Brazilian leading. There is Alain Prost, who is in fourth position, with Keke Rosberg in front of him, with behind him Thierry Boutsen, Patrick Tambay in sixth position. Things looking better for Renault in this race. That is Huub Rotengatter that you saw stop earlier on, and he's come into the pits, as have so many of them, to get rid of those wet weather tyres and put on slicks. Holding the airline up to clear the car so that when he rushes out of the pits, he won't cut the airline, and that's Philippe Alliot once again walking into the pits, and that makes his 12th retirement in 13 Grand Prix this year. Nigel Mansell, second position. 6 seconds ahead of him is Ayrton Senna. 7 seconds behind him is Keke Rosberg.
Toujours derrière Rosberg à 2 bonnes secondes et demie. Sachant Alboreto au combat. Ross va essayer de, bien sûr, de marquer quelques points. Mais je pense qu'il va surtout attendre que ça casse un peu devant. Où la lutte sera chaude entre, peut-être d'ici quelques instants, entre Senna, Mansell et Rosberg, bien que 6 secondes séparent à chaque fois la Lotus et les deux Williams. 2,08 420, mais ça ne va pas durer, car les voitures viennent de boucler un nouveau tour et il est certain qu'à chaque tour, on ira plus vite. Oui, le record de Cesaris est tombé. 2,06 616 pour Senna. Nouveau record absolu du circuit de Spa-Francorchamps pour le pilote brésilien. Mansell tourné en 2,087, Rosberg en 2,081, Prost en 2,08 juste. Woodson est tombé un peu plus lentement, 2,12-13. Ici c'est Martin Brundle au volant de la Tyrrell qui est en piste. Il n'y a toujours qu'une Tyrrell en piste car Belov n'a toujours pas été remplacé au sein de l'équipe Tyrrell. Ken Tyrrell affirmant qu'il n'a pour l'instant trouvé personne susceptible de piloter cette voiture comme il souhaiterait l'avoir pilotée. Keke Rosberg. Quant au commentateur Enzo Ferrari, il doit bien sûr être bien déçu d'avoir vu ces voitures rouges si peu longtemps à l'œuvre. Et il faut préciser que si Enzo Ferrari s'est opposé en personne, car c'est lui qui s'est opposé au remplacement de Lauda par John Watson, c'est essentiellement pour essayer de ne pas perdre trop de terrain, pas tellement pour Alboreto par rapport à Prost, car de ce côté-là on ne se fait plus beaucoup d'illusions du côté de Ferrari, mais surtout pour ne pas perdre trop de terrain sur McLaren dans le cadre du championnat du monde des constructeurs, où McLaren est en tête avec 79 points contre 77 à Ferrari. Prost regrettait bien entendu l'absence de Lauda, car il estime qu'il est toujours préférable d'avoir 2 avis sur la mise au point d'une voiture qu'un seul. Et on sait qu'à ce niveau-là, l'expérience et l'avis de Niki Lauda sont extrêmement précieux. Danner, lui, est toujours en piste au volant de sa Jacques Speed, ce talentueux pilote allemand issu de la Formule 3000 et qui a laissé une très bonne impression lors des 2 journées d'essai ici à Spa, même si ceux-ci ont été souvent perturbés en ce qui le concerne par un moteur Jacques Speed toujours très récalcitrant. On retrouve Thierry Boutsen, toujours 5e avec 44 secondes de retard sur Senna. Sourer est 15e à 1 minute 44. Boutsen va passer Rottengatter, voilà qui est fait. Alors la piste séchant, les voitures vont pouvoir exprimer leur qualité, les pilotes aussi bien sûr, mais ça, ils le font peut-être parfois encore plus sur piste mouillée que sur piste sèche. Et l'importance d'un bon équilibrage du châssis est primordial sur cette piste de Spa. Une piste de Spa sur laquelle Alain Prost s'était imposé il y a 2 ans au volant d'une Renault. Renault qui a annoncé que ces voitures ne participeraient pas au Grand Prix d'Afrique du Sud. Les moteurs, en revanche, oui, ceux qui équipent les Lotus et les Ligier et la Tyrrell pour l'instant, en tout cas, bien que Ligier, lui, ait encore réservé sa décision. Et là-bas, pour la 7e place, toujours un beau duel entre De Angelis et Warwick. La situation n'a pas changé. Senna, Mansell, Rosberg, Prost, Boutsen, Tambay. Patrick Tambay qui ne sait toujours pas pour quelle équipe il pilotera l'an prochain. Il y a eu très très peu de mouvements en ce qui concerne les transferts entre Monza et la Belgique. Il est vrai que le temps a peut-être un peu manqué et puis l'intérêt s'est focalisé essentiellement sur le maintien ou l'annulation du Grand Prix d'Afrique du Sud. Nouveau passage pour Ayrton Senna. Et nouveau record du tour accessoirement pour le Brésilien qui a tourné en 2:06.124. Il précède maintenant Mansell de 10 secondes.
Now with trees to the right of him, trees to the left of him, the highest part of the course is going to turn right into the valley, going down into 3rd gear as he takes the right-hander at Les Combes, which is where the new part of this magnificent Spa course starts. And with 2 minutes 6.124, 123 miles an hour, Senna has completed his 16th lap. He's on his 17th lap, and by virtue, of course, of being the fastest man on the course, and I'm sure he's driving well within his limits, he is in a commanding position because he's leading and pulling away from Nigel Mansell. But Ayrton Senna has had the most appalling luck in Grand Prix racing this year. Although he won in Portugal and finished 2nd in Austria and 3rd in Holland and 3rd last week in Italy, between Italy and Portugal, which were the first and last, rather the last and first races, he's had 7 front row positions, but he's failed to finish in 8 Grand Prix, 6 of which he was leading. So he is justifiably regarded as one of the top 4 in Grand Prix racing these days, and he's now going through this very fast part of the circuit, up from Blanchimont, down to the chicane, approaching the pits to come through and complete his 17th lap. And if we stay with him, I'll give you the gap between him and Nigel Mansell, and of course the gap, now you see that dry line between Mansell, Rosberg and Prost, down to the only corner where they use bottom gear. So there's Senna, and we're looking back along the circuit expecting to see Nigel Mansell come through, and the gap should be now about 10 seconds. Indeed it is. There is Mansell, and there are Rosberg and Prost virtually together for 3rd and 4th places.
Yes, you can see now, as the track is drying out, Prost, despite the fact that he will not be taking any risks and won't certainly be driving absolutely flat out, you can see the McLaren chassis starting to show its class. Because he's obviously holding on to Rosberg with some ease. Rosberg, I can assure you, will be right on the limit and going flat out. Now you see that you can see the gap now between Mansell, who's just gone out of picture. Here is teammate Rosberg with Prost behind. And it is closing up very slightly. I was wrong to say they were catching Mansell quickly. They are catching him, but only very slightly.
6.3 seconds indeed was the gap as they went down into third gear for Les Combes. We're looking at Rivage, that magnificent Ardennes countryside in the background. In front, Rosberg, world champion of 1982. Behind him, the V6 tag-powered, that's designed by Porsche, McLaren of the amazing Alain Prost, and I use the word advisedly because he's won in Brazil and Monaco and Britain and Austria and Italy and San Marino, only to have the latter disallowed through no fault of his own. He's won 5 Grand Prix this year to take the lead in the World Championship from Michele Alboreto. Incidentally, Elio De Angelis, who was in 7th place as we watched the battle for 3rd, and there he is, I was just about to say, has gone missing, and you can see why, with that smoking engine. Elio De Angelis keeping to the right to avoid laying oil. Perhaps he learned his lesson where he was in bad odour in Austria last year when he laid oil, which Alain Prost went off on, has pulled into the side and is clearly out of the Belgian Grand Prix. And that means to say that up into 7th place now comes Derek Warwick behind his teammate Tombe.
And is the battle for 3rd place, and I should think now that Prost will be beginning to cautiously look for a way round Rosberg. In fact, lost a little bit of ground there, but he's clearly being held up by Rosberg. But of course, one of the problems in a race like this is you've got a dry line, but as soon as you pull off it to overtake somebody, you're on the wet, and so you don't have as much grip as the person you're trying to pass. And of course, remember that these two, Rosberg and Prost, will be in identical cars next year because Nicky Rosberg is headed for the McLaren team.
You probably saw Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi car, who had another one of his giant crashes here, from which he emerged perfectly all right, in front of Nigel Mansell, and that is Elio De Angelis in the pits. He's managed to get back from the chicane, and his car being wheeled back into the pits, that sad sign that for this man on slick tyres, the race appears to be over as his JPS Lotus is pushed backwards towards the pits. So De Angelis out, making room for Derek Warwick. He was in 3rd position, well, probably still is, in the championship table. And now there is Martini in front of Prost. Rosberg's got past the Italian, but it's given him a bit of a breathing gap because Prost there in 4th position was much closer until the two of them came upon the yellow and black Minardi of Pierluigi Martini, the youngest, and I say this with no trace of criticism, the least skilled driver in the race. And he's now been lapped very conclusively. In fact, the leaders have lapped everybody up to Riccardo Patrese, who is in 5th position. The leaders on lap 19 being Senna on lap 20, my apologies. Senna in the lead by 11 seconds from Mansell, with Rosberg in 3rd position, Prost in 4th place, Boutsen 5th, Torbe 6th, Warwick 7th, Chiba 8th, Barbie 9th, Nelson Piquet, who had that spin at the beginning, up to 10th position, Berger 11th, Lafitte is 12th, and it looks to us here like rain is coming again.
Yes, I've just seen a couple of brollies go up. One of the problems with our competition here is that we can't actually see the sky because we're right under the roof of the grandstand and it's mountainous terrain, so, or not the direction that the rain comes from. We can see quite bright over in one direction to the southeast, but that's not where the weather's coming from. And as I say, 1 or 2 brollies going guardedly up, although I think it's only spotting, if anything, at the moment. But, of course, if we do get a shower, that will really liven things up, because it's been declared a wet race, which means that they won't stop it if it rains again. The drivers will have to find their own way into the pits and make their own choice about changing back onto wet tyres. So we could yet have some drama, and as a keen television enthusiast myself, drama is what I like to see on my television screen, so let's hope it rains.
Two men who won't be affected if it does rain are Michele Alboreto and Stefan Johansson, the two Ferrari teamsters who started 4th and 5th on the grid, both out of the race. Another day of disaster for Ferrari. Here, Carlo Ghinzani out, having ripped the right rear wheel off his Tolman as he plunged down to the Eau Rouge, and he's perfectly okay. Martin Brundle is out, Elio De Angelis is out. Here is the 4th place man, Alain Prost, and this race at the moment is all about the 4 lead drivers who are increasing the distance between themselves and the 4th place man, the 5th place man, Thierry Boutsen, who is now very nearly a full minute behind the race leader, Ayrton Senna, with Mansell 2nd, Rosberg 3rd. Mansell is 12 seconds behind Senna. Rosberg is 6 seconds behind Mansell, and you can see the gap between Rosberg 3rd and Prost in 4th position. Then Martin Brundle, incidentally, has restarted. He's in 20th place now, but he's 5 laps behind. He can still work his way up through the field. There's Rosberg. The Honda engine of the Williams has deliberately been detuned a bit. They've turned the boost down, because you will remember that Rosberg has been leading the last 4 Grand Prix. The rain is now pouring down. They'll have to come in and change those slicks for wets.
Yes, it's coming down quite heavy drizzle, I would describe it, but that will wet the track. It's a question really of how long the shower is, because the drivers, as I say, we can't see the sky from here, but the intelligent driver will be looking at the sky, because if this is just going to be a quick passing shower, then he might want to stay out another lap to see what happens, because of course, if it is only a passing shower, he will have to make, if he comes in to change onto wets, he'll then have to change back onto dry. So it might be worth staying out for a couple of laps and limping round if one thinks it's going to dry again. But I don't think it's going to last long. It's drizzling here. It's probably not even drizzling over the far side of the circuit where the leaders now are.
So we are now just about at the halfway stage. We're on lap 21 out of 43, looking at the battle for 3rd place between Keke Rosberg and Alain Prost, with in front of them Ayrton Senna leading Nigel Mansell by 12 seconds. Behind Prost, who is 4th, is Boutsen 5th and Torbay 6th, with Warwick 7th, just about 2 seconds behind his teammates. And the weather, I say again, is turning wet, has turned wet again. Now, those of you who aren't familiar with this tyre situation may wonder why James and I are going on about wet and dry tyres. What's the difference? Well, normal road cars have a tread on their tyres, not to add strength, but to enable them in wet conditions to clear the water from the surface and let the rubber get through to the tarmac. The more rubber you can have on the road, the more grip you get, and that is why in racing conditions, when the roads are dry, the cars have slick tyres, and you can see them on Keke Rosberg's car, no tread at all. You can see the water glistening right across the tyre surface, and there's water glistening because it is raining. So they're going to have to clear that water soon by coming in and changing tyres.
And as I can understand, just looking out over the rolling hills, it is not raining around the back of the circuit. So we've got a situation where this shower is very local and it's only wetting half the track. So for the moment, I'm sure that nobody is going to come in and panic onto wet tyres. But it really, I tell you, this is a situation where it's not a lot of fun being a driver, because your brain is going like a fruit machine with things going, and now it's really pouring down now, but not everywhere. Very difficult situation for the drivers. Does he risk coming in to go back onto wets? He knows that it's going to dry up again later. There are the wet tyres already in the Lotus pit. Everybody's ready. What they may not know is that it's not raining out the far side of the circuit.
The reason this Spa circuit was reduced in length from its previous magnificent long lap to its current 4.3 miles was precisely that you could have dry conditions at the start and wet roads at Stavelot, and it was regarded as being very dangerous. Well, it's happening even on the short lap. There's Nigel Mansell, still in that 2nd position. Mansell, whose best place this year have been 2 fifths in Portugal and San Marino. And by the way, Derek Warwick is now pushing Torbay for 6th place.
Qui passe devant moi maintenant. Que vont faire Rosberg et Prost? Rosberg passe, Prost, lui, passe aussi. Eh bien, ils sont culottés. Bien sûr, ça tourne beaucoup moins vite maintenant. Senna a bouclé le tour précédent en 2.12, Mansell en 2.14, Rosberg en 2.14 et Prost prudentissime en 2.17.9. Ici, c'est une Brabham, c'est celle de Souvert que l'on voit, qui a donc concédé un tour. Les voitures deviennent très difficiles à tenir. Et la pluie s'est arrêtée là devant moi. Évidemment que les pilotes sont seuls juges et qu'ils s'arrêtent s'ils estiment que la chose est vraiment indispensable. Woodson passe, il est toujours 5e et Warwick a passé Tambay, lui. Warwick est 6e. Précédent d'une seconde son coéquipier Tambay. Oh, même pas une seconde. Et puis Cheever est 8e au volant de l'Alfa Romeo. Un plan d'hélicoptère de la Lotus de Ayrton Senna da Silva. Un tour au leader. Inamovible leader, même si De Angelis a été pointé une fois en tête durant la course au moment du changement de pneumatique de son coéquipier. Senna deuxième à 14 secondes, il a repris une seconde, Senna. Rosberg à 19 secondes. Prost à 26 secondes. Senna se trouve entre Brundle qu'il a déjà passé et peut-être Fabi. Oui, c'était Fabi. Alors personne parmi les leaders ne se sont arrêtés, même derrière. Ici c'est Strife qui va concéder un... Ou est-ce Lafitte qui va concéder un tour? Il y a beaucoup de monde tout à coup. Avec Rottengatter qui est encore devant tout le monde. C'est Lafitte qui laisse passer le leader Senna. Et puis Rottengatter derrière. Alors ils ne sont plus beaucoup dans le premier tour, dans le même tour. Nous sommes dans le 25e tour qui débute maintenant. Il reste 10 voitures dans le même tour, y compris celle de Gerhard Berger que l'on voit juste devant Senna ici. Dans la descente. Léger travers de la piste. Berger avalé. Senna est à 18 secondes. Et attention, Rosberg est à 2 secondes de Mansell, son coéquipier. Il sera bientôt temps d'aller voir ce qui se passe entre les deux frères ennemis, qui se sont, il faut dire, assez bien entendus cette saison. Mansell et Keke Rosberg. Prost, lui, est à 30 secondes du leader et à 10 secondes de Rosberg. Il ne doit pas prendre beaucoup de plaisir, Prost. Il doit même peut-être un peu s'ennuyer parce qu'il est tout seul à 10 secondes de Rosberg et puis avec une avance de 20 secondes environ sur Boutsen. Peu d'abandon. Il faut dire que les intempéries empêchent, le mauvais temps empêche les voitures d'être poussées à la limite. Et 25e tour pour Ayrton Senna, qui a fait plus de la moitié de son pensum. Il passe Martini pour la deuxième ou troisième fois. Deuxième fois. Ici Martin Brundle. Et voyez que Rosberg est presque dans les roues de son coéquipier Mansell qui le précède. Et c'est ce que nos confrères de la RTB vont nous proposer maintenant. L'écart est de 1 seconde au passage de la ligne devant les bottes tout à l'heure. Et comme sur la rectiligne, Mansell semble ne pas devoir être inquiété par Rosberg, on peut supposer que c'est dans les virages ou tout simplement dans la façon de piloter la voiture sur cette piste extrêmement glissante que Rosberg fait la différence. Mansell qui aura pour équipier Nelson Piquet l'an prochain. Oui, c'est dans la partie sinueuse du tracé que Rosberg revient le plus fort. Alors Prost a presque 1 minute d'avance sur Boutsen. Tambay lui a cédé la 7e place à Cheever. Tambay est à 1 tour. Martini laisse passer tout le monde. Enfin tout le monde. Il laisse passer les deux Williams. Et c'est Brundle maintenant qui va bientôt devoir s'effacer devant le duo Mansell-Rosberg qui attaque Rosberg. Non, il a tenté, mais c'était même un peu osé. Va-t-il essayer de faire au freinage? Difficile de quitter la trajectoire car on se retrouve sur un tronçon de piste beaucoup plus humide. Bientôt entreprendre Keke Rosberg. C'est toujours très délicat ce passage de l'eau rouge. Il est vraiment dans le sillage. Il pourra prendre l'aspiration de son coéquipier. Il parvient tout de même à, je dirais pas, faire la différence. Attaque de Rosberg qui échoue. Je crois la puissance du moteur de Mansell n'est pas en cause. Paquet nous offre un de ces spectacles qui nous réjouit. Et Mansell a bien décidé à se défendre bec et ongle. Et là, sur certains tronçons où la piste est plus sèche, il parvient à tenir son coéquipier en respect. Cheever s'arrête juste devant nous. Abandon de Eddie Cheever sur l'Alfa Romeo. Problème apparemment de boîte de vitesse. Il n'a pas réussi à passer la cinquième. Sa boîte a dû se bloquer. Il est arrêté à juste sous nos yeux. C'est toujours ce duo Mansell-Rosberg. En quatrième position, Prost est maintenant à 42 secondes. Il semble qu'il perd tout de même beaucoup de terrain. Il tourne en 2,14 alors que Senna tourne en 2,08. Est-ce parcours tactique? Sachant que Woodson est très loin devant. Très loin derrière, pardon, il est à près d'une minute. Et il n'y a guère que 7 voitures encore dans le même tour. Même pas 6, je pense. Car où est passé Tambay? On va faire un pointage au prochain passage. Qui rentre. Et Piquet lui est 7e maintenant. Et c'est qui est devant les deux Williams. C'est Berger qui est maintenant bien attardé. Il est 9e en un tour. Et nous n'avons plus que 6 voitures dans le même tour. Je ne sais pas ce qu'il est advenu de Tambay, qui ne semble plus passer. Sourer est 11e. Toujours Senna, Mansell, Rosberg, Prost. Il tourne un petit peu plus vite. Prost, il tourne en 2,12 maintenant. En 5e position, Woodson, 6e Warwick. 7e Piquet, 8e Lafitte, 9e Berger, 10e Strive, 11e Sourer, 12e Patrese, avec arrêt de Patrese précisément.
Now there is Alan Prost. Now Prost has dropped right back from the Mansell-Rosberg battle, and I must have expected him when the track dried out to start to go forward again. I could fully understand the fact that he was very careful and cautious when it was damp, but the track is now back to the best we've had it, and I rather expect Prost to keep going. Of course, he's got a huge lead over Thierry Boutsen, who's in 5th place, some 50 seconds, but even Boutsen has caught him a little bit, and he's some 29 seconds now behind Keke Rosberg.
C'est Strife, et il y a Sourer qui est derrière Strife, qui devrait lui disputer la place d'ici quelques instants. Oui, c'est bien Strife, casque bleu pour Strife, casque vert foncé pour Lafitte, et Sourer qui est tout près. Alors Strife va-t-il l'attaquer? Essayer de passer Prost. Il a tourné en 2-10, il accélère tout de même un peu sa cadence. Et Strife, lui, aimerait bien prendre son sillage afin de ne pas être trop harcelé par Sourer. Toujours le duo Mansell-Rosberg, inséparable et distant de quelques millièmes de seconde. Senna réalise 16 secondes et demie d'avance sur Mansell, à peine plus sur Rosberg. Essaye de pousser son coéquipier à la faute. Ça peut sembler paradoxal, mais enfin chacun court pour soi. Patrese repart, on lui a changé, je crois, son boîtier électronique. Et vous le voyez, les écarts, les positions sont extrêmement claires, à l'exception bien sûr de la 2e place qu'occupe Mansell et que convoite Rosberg. Peut-être pour maintenant. Alors, il ne peut pas quitter sa trajectoire, Rosberg, sans quoi il y a longtemps qu'il aurait essayé.
Mansell and Rosberg absolutely together as they go into La Source. And Rosberg trying very hard to get past as they went through La Source. Nigel Mansell having nothing of it, teammates they may be, but individuals they are too, and each of them means to hold that 2nd place in the hope for them that something will happen to Ayrton Senna, and it has several times this year in the past, in which case one of these two could yet end up as the winner in Belgium. This is the best race on the circuit for 2nd place. Number 6, 3rd, Rosberg ahead of him, 5, Mansell 2nd.
Yes, and the hairpin at La Source last time through, Rosberg demonstrated that difficulty of coming off, and here, he had a look. That he demonstrated the difficulty of overtaking when you've got a dry line and the rest of the track's wet. He stepped out, he got a beautiful run at Nigel Mansell. He stepped out of the dry line to try and have a look at that, breaking down the inside, and of course he had to brake earlier because he was on the wet. And it's a real problem. But the more the track dries, the better, more opportunity Rosberg will have to get his run.
I wonder what's going through Keke Rosberg's mind at the beginning of this season, when it was announced that Nigel Mansell, and this is a replay of Rosberg trying to get that 2nd place from Mansell, at the beginning of this season, as Rosberg now comes out from behind Mansell, and Mansell just moves across, which he's perfectly entitled to do there, on the apex of the corner, and forces Rosberg back. Well, as I was saying at the beginning of this season, when it was announced that Mansell would be moving into the Williams team from the Lotus team, Keke Rosberg said very firmly that he didn't want that to happen. And now Rosberg, as he tries again at La Source, and fails again. That's the slowest corner on the course, 50 miles an hour.
Well, Prost is behind him, and was that a problem there? Yes, it looks like Rosberg is in trouble. He slowed right down, coming out of the hairpin as he went away, and something is wrong with Keke Rosberg. There he goes.
So we'll see now as Nigel Mansell comes towards us. There is the man who is in second place, Nigel Mansell, and he's off. Nigel Mansell now, either his tyres or his brakes are going, because Nigel Mansell ran right over the apex of the corner there. It shouldn't have done him any harm, or the car any harm, because there wasn't a very high ridge there. But nevertheless, Nigel Mansell is in some sort of trouble, which means that Ayrton Senna, who we haven't seen for a long time, but is still 18 seconds ahead of the second place man, and Mansell seems to me to be going slow there too. Where is Rosberg?
Well, Rosberg slowed right up, and we haven't seen him. He appears to be moving on around the circuit. But we'll watch Mansell carefully, because I think maybe that was just a mistake out of lack of concentration. The pressure that he'd been under for several laps from Keke Rosberg suddenly disappeared. And it's very easy then to let your mind wander. And I think, here we go, we're seeing it again. Now, I think he was just late on the brakes. He slid wide, bump, bump, bump. He just basically got onto the wet. And I hope that was just a little slip of concentration, a bit naughty by Nigel, because in these conditions you cannot let go for a moment, but with a bit of luck he got away with that and didn't damage the bottom of the car. It looked fairly soft where he was travelling, but we'll keep an eye out for Rosberg. He's disappeared around the back of the circuit limping, so we can't really tell what's happening to him yet, as yet.
Alain Prost is just cruising gently along by his standards, going stupefyingly fast by yours and mine. But he's obviously very happy with the fourth position that he's got. He's 50 seconds now behind the race leader, Ayrton Senna, but he is 49 seconds ahead of the fifth place man, Thierry Boutsen.
Yes, he seems to be pacing. That's another quickest lap for Mansell. He seems to be pacing himself to Boutsen behind him, because the gap, Boutsen started to catch him. The gap came nearly a minute down to 50 seconds, and Prost seems to be just matching his pace to that 50-second gap.
And Keke Rosberg has failed to pass us, so appears to be out of the race, in which case the luck of Alain Prost is with him again. I said at Monza, it's not enough to be a brilliant driver. It's not enough to have a John Barnard designed McLaren. It's not enough to have a TAG Porsche designed engine. It's not enough to have Goodyear tyres. You have also got to be lucky. And Alain Prost this year seems to be making up with good luck for all the bad luck that he's had in the past, because he will now be up into third place with Keke Rosberg in fourth position, and we're wondering about a pit stop for Rosberg. There is the fin, and you can see that he has been into the pits. You can see the white labels on the tyres. Those white rims on the tread are actually labels. They don't bother to take them off because they know that the friction of the road surface will soon do that for them. So Keke Rosberg has come in for the second time. He's worn out what I suspect were a set of B slicks, or he may have had a puncture. And he's almost certainly now on C compound slicks, which are the softest of all, because there's only 10 laps to go, with Ayrton Senna there leading, with those spirals of vapour coming up from the rear wing. Ayrton Senna now on his way to his second Grand Prix win in his short career. This is only his 27th Grand Prix. He won in Portugal and was second in Austria, third in Holland, third in Italy. Has failed to finish 8 times, but if he finishes here where he is, he will win. And we are on lap 33 with Senna there in the lead, with Nigel Mansell in second position, with Alain Prost third, with Keke Rosberg fourth, with Thierry Boutsen in the arrows in fifth position, and with Derek Warwick in the points in sixth place. In seventh place, but he's been lapped, is Nelson Piquet. In eighth position is Jacques Lafitte in the Ligier, and in ninth position is Thierry Boutsen's teammate Gerhard Berger in the Arrows. The race leader, Ayrton Senna. Another great Brazilian. Let us remember Emerson Fittipaldi, and of course Nelson Piquet, double world champion. And nobody has any doubt that Ayrton Senna will be a world champion in the future. Many people expected him to be the world champion this year.
Yes, I think Senna really has suffered from the fragility of the Lotus, and it's significant that he won in Portugal when the weather was wet, and he's looking in a very strong position to win here when the weather has been partially wet. And of course this puts a much lower mechanical load on the car. The cars become much, much more reliable in wet weather because you can't be strained to their limit, and that applies both to the engine and the suspension, to everything. And I think Lotus should examine their situation. A little bit of a twitch there from Senna, but no problem at all. Should examine their position, because that really spells it out for them. And they've got, during the winter at least, to try and get that car as hard as their leading contenders, because that's where they're at. And I'm sure that's what Senna will be wanting them to do.
There's a big question, of course, of the extent to which, if at all, the Renault engines are going to be developed for the Lotus team and the others during the winter, because now, incidentally, Senna is some 29 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell in second place. With Renault pulling out of racing, where everybody's wondering whether they're going to spend money to develop the race engines which Lotus and Tyrrell, and hopefully, from Guy Ligier's point of view, Ligier will be using next year. The decision is going to be made this week, we understand. There is Senna, his V6 Renault engine, sounding good, and it's Lotus who have given Renault their outstanding successes this year, because De Angelis won in San Marino and Senna won at Portugal, whereas neither of the Renault team drivers, Patrick Tambay and Derek Warwick, have finished higher than third. And of course the Ligier drivers, notably Jacques Lafitte, have failed to finish higher than third. Lafitte has had 2 third places in Britain and in Germany. And so, on that dry line, weaving left and right, following the configuration of the course, through the lines of trees, at about 170 miles an hour, up to the bus stop, out of the bus stop, up to Derek Warwick, who is in 6th place, comes Ayrton Senna to complete his 34th lap. His 35th lap, I'm sorry. So Senna is catching Derek Warwick, who's in 6th place. He's now 26 seconds ahead of Mansell. Senna has definitely just got to use his head, and he always does that. He really is a thinking driver, and protect the machinery to come home and win his 2nd Grand Prix.
Yes, we've got the leaders now are well spread out, in fact. We've got Senna nearly 30 seconds clear of Mansell, and obviously pacing himself to Nigel Mansell. Mansell himself has some 30 seconds on Alain Prost, and Keke Rosberg, who after his stop for fresh tyres has rejoined in 4th place, is some 17 seconds behind Prost. So not close enough to him to be really uncomfortable, but enough to make Prost keep going and not slow right down. So at the moment, these all driving to the finish. It may be that Rosberg might fancy his chances to try and catch Prost, but that's about it.
I think we can now start to talk about the World Championship as we watch Nigel Mansell in 2nd place. Alain Prost, the World Championship leader, is in the points with his 3rd place. Michele Alboreto, 2nd in the championship, is out of the race. Elio De Angelis, 3rd in the championship, is out of the race. Ayrton Senna, 4th in the championship, is of course very much in the race and in the lead. Stefan Johansson, 5th in the championship, is out of the race. And Nelson Piquet, 6th in the championship, is in the race but not in the points. So it's only Prost and Senna, the top World Championship 6 places, who are in those 6 vital places which score points in this, the Belgian Grand Prix, as we look at Nigel Mansell in 2nd place. So Prost will undoubtedly increase his lead over Alboreto. Ayrton Senna will be closer to his teammate De Angelis. In fact, he will be 1 point ahead of him. If Ayrton Senna wins this race, he will move up into 3rd position in the championship.
Having criticised the agility of the Lotus team to a certain extent just now, I must qualify that by saying that, of course, Ayrton Senna has finished his last 3 Grand Prix very handsomely and looks like finishing this, so it may be that we can see an improvement in their reliability.
We haven't mentioned Rosberg for a while, and don't think he's not in there, because Keke Rosberg, number 6, is currently in 4th position, having been into and out of the pits as Prost passes Pierluigi Martini in the Motor Morini powered Minardi, and off nearly spins Nelson Piquet on in the wet, because La Source seems to be holding the water far more than other parts of the track, and it's very dodgy indeed as you come round that first gear maximum revs right-hander, as Nelson Piquet found to his cost, and Prost is powering along now, and you can see how much he's pulled out the gap over Pierluigi Martini, the youngest driver in the race, 24-year-old from Ravenna, and Prost smoothly driving on his way. But he's dropping back. His race time, his lap times are much, much slower than they were. He's now 58 seconds behind, although, just to prove me wrong, he's just done the fastest lap, 2 minutes 3.48 seconds, but nevertheless, the gap between him and Senna is 58 seconds.
What's caused that, Murray, is Rosberg behind him, because he's actually pulled away a little bit from Rosberg, increased the gap, so he had to put his finger out and stick in a quick one, and that was, as I said earlier, when Rosberg regained, that was the one thing that was going to have to make, as it were, disturb the comfort of a very quiet, sensible Sunday afternoon for Alain Prost, so he's actually had to get going again, but I'm quite sure he's not extending himself. And Nelson Piquet now posts an even quicker lap. I should say that we'll get lots of different fastest laps and funny results as we go between now and the end of the race, because the track is drying out quite thoroughly now, and is getting faster all the time. So Nelson Piquet in 7th place, and he's fighting hard to catch Derek Warwick,
who is just ahead of him and within sight of Nelson Piquet. 2 minutes 2.65, fastest lap so far. The slick Pirelli's working well, and the very slick driver, Brazilian Nelson Piquet, catching the 6th place man. We're on lap 38. Senna leads, Mansell second, now over half a minute behind Senna. Prost in 3rd position, nearly a minute behind Senna. Keke Rosberg in 4th position, some 17 seconds behind Prost. Thierry Boutsen is about 40 seconds behind Rosberg. Derek Warwick in 6th place has been lapped, and he's going to be caught by Nelson Piquet very quickly. And then there they are. There's Huub Rotengatter in the way again, I'm afraid, in the Osella. Derek Warwick and Piquet going through, trying to. This is the fight for 6th place. Warwick and Piquet both ahead of Huub Rotengatter, being very careful to stay on the dry line. And Piquet's BMW engine has got far more power than the V6 Renault, and we can expect to see Piquet, when he gingerly comes out of La Source, to put the hammer down and pass Derek Warwick.
Elle devrait tourner bientôt à l'avantage du Brésilien, je pense. Tant que Warwick ne démérite le moins du monde, en l'occurrence. Et c'est maintenant Boutsen qui est devant eux. Alors c'est même la lutte pour la 5e place qui est engagée entre Boutsen, Warwick et Piquet. Voilà qui va redonner un peu de piment à cette course. Et voilà, Warwick est 5e, Piquet 6e, Boutsen 7e, il perd 2 places en l'espace de 100 mètres. Maintenant harcèle, il harcèle toujours Warwick, mais c'est maintenant pour la 5e place. dommage pour Thierry Boutsen qui avait fait une belle course. Il a tenu longtemps. Sourire lui est toujours 10e. Le classement, Senna, Mansell, Prost, Rosberg, Warwick, Piquet, Boutsen, Lafitte est 8e, Leuenberger 10e, Sourire 11e, Strife. Et voilà Thierry Boutsen. Prost vient d'établir un nouveau record du tour en 2:01,730 et il maintient Rosberg à une bonne distance. Il le maintient à 20 secondes. « 2:01,730 va-t-on passer le cap des 2 minutes? Cap inférieur bien sûr, ça n'est pas impossible. Et le voilà Alain Prost. Alors que Senna entre dans son 40e des 43 tours. Voyez le meilleur temps de Prost, 205 de moyenne. Et le soleil inonde cette très belle région des Ardennes. De Spa-Francorchamps. Mansell est à 27 secondes de Senna, Prost à 54 secondes. Et puis derrière Prost, c'est Berger qui... Oh, je crois que Lafitte s'arrête. Ouais. Lafitte a dû toucher quelque chose, il s'arrête juste devant moi. Il a peut-être touché un tout petit quelque chose, c'est-à-dire la glissière. Vous voyez Lafitte qui a déjà franchi la barrière et qui va enlever son casque. Avec sa roue avant gauche, oui, bien sûr qu'il a touché Lafitte. Et pas seulement un petit quelque chose, il a bien touché avec sa roue arrière gauche. C'est la raison pour laquelle sa roue arrière droite, pardon, et c'est la raison pour laquelle sa roue avant gauche ne touche plus par
20 seconds ahead of Mansell, who is on his way, Nigel Mansell, to the highest place that he has ever had since he joined the Williams team. And for that matter, the highest place he's ever had, because although Nigel Mansell's had 5 third places, this is Senna in the lead. Those third places were with the JPS Lotus team for whom Senna drives, and Mansell's yet to finish higher than 5th in a Williams or 3rd in a JPS. Well, he's on his way to 2nd place. He is on his 41st lap. He's chasing this man, the brilliant, and although that tends to be an overworked word, it certainly applies to Ayrton Senna, who's got very little now between him and his first place.
And Piquet has got past Derek Warwick. Well, I suppose it was inevitable. Derek did a good job holding him off for as long as he could, but Piquet came charging up behind him, and Nelson is really flying. Ayrton Senna is doing exactly the opposite now. He's done his work for the afternoon. He's taking it very slowly and gently. He's just cruising it round to the finish. He's cut the revs right down on his engine. I could hear that as he went past us. And he's conserving fuel, conserving everything, just trying to manage his way to the line.
The most serious, dedicated and contemplative man in Grand Prix racing, and there's a lot of them, but Ayrton Senna thinks all the time about his racing, about his car, about his tyres, about his lines, everything. And he's now on lap 41, 30 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell in 2nd place, and Mansell on his way, as I just said, to the highest place he's ever had in his Grand Prix career. Alain Prost in an easy 3rd place, just about half a minute behind Mansell, but some 20 seconds ahead of Keke Rosberg, who is in 4th position. Nelson Piquet up to 5th place, I suppose there is a remote chance that Nelson Piquet might catch Alain Prost, but I think it is extremely unlikely. And so now Senna finishes another lap. That's his 41st lap completed round La Source. You saw how wet it was there from the way his slick tyres picked up the water, which glistened for a little while on the tread, but it's very rapidly frictioned away by the dry surface. There's some 750 horsepower at least coming from Ayrton Senna's V6 turbocharged Renault engine, and this is real encouragement for the French concern, who haven't had the best of luck with their own cars this season. And Jean Sage and Gerard Toth, who is the head man of Renault, will be getting some real encouragement from this brilliant drive in front of one of their engines in the JPS Lotus by Ayrton Senna. Now on lap 42, Mansell second, Prost in third place, Rosberg in fourth position, Piquet in fifth place, Piquet having been lapped by Senna. And then behind Piquet is Derek Warwick in sixth position. Boutsen's dropping back in seventh place. Berger, his teammate in the Arrows, is eighth. Mark Sura in the second of the Brabhams is in ninth place. Philippe Streff, in the only Ligier left in the running because Lafitte's retired, is in 10th place. And that's it as far as runners are concerned. So watch the Williams out of the left-hander there. That's the approach to the right-hander at Les Farnes, which is practically the lowest part of the course. Bit of an S-bend down to the double right at Blanchimont, which is entered in fourth, then at about 120 miles an hour in third gear. This is the lowest point of the course now, just by the heliport. Round the right-hand up into fifth gear at about 160 miles an hour. Ayrton Senna going through to complete his 42nd lap and start his 43rd and last lap. So I expect we'll stay with the Brazilian now, who on that dry line is on his way up to the fastest part of the course.
Yes, and Senna has really underlined that talent that we all know is there anyway. He's driven a marvellous race. It's been very difficult conditions. It's been a big test of, first and foremost, driving car control. It's also been a big test of concentration, and it's also been a test of tactical. More importantly than Senna, we know that he can do it. We've seen Nigel Mansell do it with lots of difficulty, because he had been building himself a reputation for not being a thinking enough driver, if that's the right description. And Nigel has come through with flying colours today. He has passed the test. He's driven very sensibly and cautiously when he's needed to, and he's been fast.
Well, there goes Alain Prost, who is in that third position, 56 seconds now behind Ayrton Senna. He's on his last lap, so of course is Nigel Mansell. There is the race leader, Ayrton Senna, who in a race which he genuinely has dominated and is getting the signals from the marshals, and there's a lot of British marshals here, as ever, from the British Motor Racing Marshals Club, adding strength to the Belgian setup. And Ayrton Senna now has got very little distance to go, because he's on his way up to the bus stop, and when he clears the bus stop he could kick out the clutch, and there's Thierry Boutsen walking in, having retired from 7th position right in the closing stages of the race. Rotten luck for the Belgian, but now Senna is almost home, because he will pass Boutsen as Senna exits the bus stop, and I hope the producer's going to let us see Senna finishing. Indeed, here he is, and although we didn't see him cross the line, Ayrton Senna has won the Belgian Grand Prix in his JPS Lotus Renault with its Goodyear tyres, the second win in his career, and it certainly won't be the last. Nigel Mansell coming home in second place, the highest place he's had in his career, after, like Senna, a thinking drive. just as much of a thinking drive for Alain Prost, who increases his lead in the World Championship over Michele Alboreto by finishing 4th in the Marlboro McLaren. 3rd in the Marlboro McLaren, I'm sorry, with Keke Rosberg in 4th position. Nelson Piquet will be in 5th position, and Derek Warwick, the last point scorer in the Renault, in 6th place.
Cela ne devrait pas tarder, voilà c'est fait. Alain Prost sur la McLaren Tag. En 4e position, on attend Keke Rosberg sur la 2e Williams. Mansell est à 28 secondes du leader, Prost à 55 secondes. Rosberg à 1 minute 15. En 5e position, nous avons Nelson Piquet sur la Brabham BMW. Précédent 6e, Derek Warwick sur Renault. Puis 7e, Berger. 8e, Sourer. 9e, Philippe Streiff. Et cela nous amène bien sûr au championnat du monde, où Prost marque 4 points supplémentaires. Son avance est dorénavant de 16 points sur Alboreto. Alors que le Grand Prix d'Afrique du Sud se dispute ou pas. Pour l'instant, il est censé se disputer, mais les choses peuvent encore évoluer d'ici là. Eh bien, Prost peut être sacré champion du monde dans 3 semaines lors du Grand Prix d'Europe qui se courra sur le circuit de Brands Hatch en Angleterre. Et puis ce qui est à relever, c'est que Senna souffle à son coéquipier De Angelis la 3e place du championnat du monde avec 32 points contre les 31 de De Angelis qui n'a pas terminé la course. Alors je présume que nous allons suivre la cérémonie du podium qui va se dérouler sous un soleil radieux. Senna tenait à effectuer son tour d'honneur, alors que Thierry Boutsen, lui, s'en revient bien déçu à son stand. Eh bien évidemment, il n'y a plus de casquette lorsque une Lotus gagne. Le geste qui avait contribué à rendre célèbre Colin Chapman. Ne vient plus saluer les victoires des voitures noires. Et pour Senna, c'est le 4e podium consécutif, tandis que pour Prost, c'est le 7e podium consécutif. Je crois vraiment cette fois que le titre ne pourra plus échapper à Alain Prost, qui a fait le forcing en début de championnat, qui maintenant assure ses courses, car il veut assurer également ce titre mondial qu'il espère remporter depuis 3 ans. Il est en tête, Alain Prost, avec 16 points d'avance sur Alboreto. En 3e position, je vous l'ai dit, Senna 32, puis De Angelis 31. Et puis plus loin, en 13e position, Marc Sourer en reste à 5 points. Précédent égalé aujourd'hui par Warwick, et précédent le malheureux Belhoff, ainsi que De Cesaris et Arnoux. Ayrton Senna confirme, il remporte la 2e victoire de sa carrière. La première, on s'en souvient, c'était au Portugal en avril dernier. Au championnat du monde des constructeurs, McLaren augmente son avantage par rapport à Ferrari. Celui-ci se chiffre dorénavant à 6 points. Lotus est à 20 points de McLaren, mais peut espérer rattraper Ferrari. Et puis plus loin, Williams, qui fait une bonne opération aujourd'hui avec une 2e et une 4e place Brabham, Renault, etc. Le président Balès, très bien. Mansell est déjà sur le podium. Senna l'y rejoint, on attend Prost. Et l'hymne brésilien. C'est l'hymne anglais pour Lotus que l'on nous donne en premier. Bien court et surtout pas d'hymne brésilien. La procédure voudrait que l'on donne d'abord l'hymne du pays dont est issu le pilote, puis l'hymne du pays de son équipe. Toujours est-il qu'Ayrton Senna a remporté de façon exemplaire et méritoire et méritée le Grand Prix de Belgique devant Nigel Mansell et Alain Prost. Abandon d'Alboreto dès le 5e tour avec des ennuis électriques. Au championnat du monde, Prost augmente son avance, 69 points contre 53 à Alboreto. Senna, que vous voyez là, est dorénavant 3e avec 32 points. 4e d'Angelis, décision peut-être dans 3 semaines dans le Grand Prix d'Europe à Brenzach. Merci d'avoir suivi ce Grand Prix de Belgique, un peu inhabituel, il faut le dire, compte tenu des conditions atmosphériques, compte tenu de l'évolution de cette course. Et puis c'est la bataille sur le podium. Les pilotes n'ont peut-être pas été suffisamment rincés tout à l'heure. Toujours est-il qu'ils se défoulent, qu'ils se font plaisir. Et cela fait plaisir à voir. Rendez-vous dans 3 semaines, mesdames et messieurs, pour le Grand Prix d'Europe. Ici Jacques Deschenaux qui vous parlait en direct de Spa-Francorchamps. À vous Genève, à vous le studio.
Voilà donc les 14 pilotes qui terminent l'épreuve, malgré l'abandon très dommage de Thierry Boutsen à 2 tours de l'arrivée, différentiel de 4. Victoire donc de
I think it's fantastic. I think the whole team need a good result such as that. Not just finish a race, but actually finish in the front. And we had the car to go quick and finish the race today.
The car must have been perfect. There were so many different track conditions, wet to dry to wet to dry. How much of a problem was that for you?
The biggest problem to judge your pace. If you try too hard when it was a bit damp, you would go off. If you take too easy, the others would catch you. So it was a big problem to judge the pace that you should take.
You've led so many Grand Prix this year, and there you are, #1 on the victory roster, and you must feel very pleased.
Of course I'm pleased. The only objective for anybody in Formula 1 is to win. And I'm pleased that the team provided me with such a good car and capable to win.
So a great day for Ayrton Senna, but a pretty useful day also for Alain Prost, because his 3rd place gives him another 4 points in the World Championship table and extends his lead over Michele Alboreto to 16 points. Ayrton Senna now appears in 3rd place in the table, but just 1 point ahead of his own teammate Elio De Angelis, and there are now 3 drivers tying for 5th place: Piquet, Rosberg and Johansson. In the World Championship of Constructors, McLaren move further ahead of Ferrari, 83 points to 77, but that's one championship which is still fairly open, with Lotus Renault in 3rd place. And the championship itself goes on in 3 weeks' time in the European Grand Prix at Brands Hatch.
Nigel, when you came up the rostrum steps, you were obviously in pain. What's the problem?
The problem is, Murray, I've ripped a muscle in the side of my chest that happened at Monza. And of course, doing the race today in the conditions that we did them in, for sure I've ripped it some more.
But you've just had your highest ever place, so I'm sure you can raise a smile, can't you?
Yeah, just about. Almost a tear earlier.
Tell us about the race.
Well, it was a very good race. I was a little disappointed because I was sort of holding the time at 10 and 12 seconds with Ayrton. But then I had a brake balance problem with the car that took me a few laps to sort out. And then Mark Surer almost pushed me off the circuit at the top. And then I had a small brake balance problem again later in the race. So all in all, you know, I'm very happy to have come second.
Nigel, in 3 weeks' time, we've got Brands Hatch. How do you feel about that, the Williams and your chances?
I think I'll be feeling a lot better then than I am now. But obviously, I think from here on in, we should be in good shape for every race that comes our way.
Now, there's an enormous amount of controversy about South Africa. It is going to be held at the moment. What's your feeling? Should we go or not?
Are you asking me personally or for an honest...
I'm asking you personally.
My personal view is, my own personal view is that there's no way we should go. But like everybody else, I am under contract as a professional race car driver. The race is being held, so therefore I'm going.
Well, at the end of this season, the Keke Rosberg Nigel Mansell partnership stops and the Nelson Piquet Nigel Mansell partnership starts. What about that?
I think it's going to be very, very good. I mean, I've learned a few things off Keke this year. He's a very talented and very quick driver. And I think for sure with Nelson Piquet, twice world champion, coming to the Williams team, the team is on a definite up and everything's coming together. And for Nelson, I think it's a very good time to join the team.
Well, regrettably, you're not going to be world champion this year, and some other time perhaps, but who's Mansell's forecast? Alboreto or Prost?
No, I think for sure now Alain is going to be world champion this year.
So, Nigel Mansell tips Alain Prost for the championship, but there are still several races to go and anything can happen. And one of those races, of course, is the Grand Prix of Europe in 3 weeks' time in Britain at Brands Hatch, the circuit that most of the drivers say is the best of the lot. We at Grand Prix are going to be there, and we hope that, as ever, you'll be watching us at